Penguin Random House Canada presents The Bishop's Man by Linden Macintyre. Read for you by Rowat.
Book 1. From Psalms. O ye sons of men, how long will ye turn my glory into shame? Chapter 1. The night before things started to become unstuck, I actually spent a good hour taking stock of my general situation and concluded that, all things considered, I was in pretty good shape. I was approaching the age of 50, a psychological threshold only slightly less daunting than death, and found myself not much changed from 40 or even 30. If anything, I was healthier. The last decade of the century, and of the millennium, was shaping up to be less stressful than the 8th, which had been defined by certain events in Central America, and the 9th, burdened as it was by scandals here at home. I was a priest in a time that is not especially convivial toward the clergy. I had, nevertheless, achieved what I believed to be a sustainable spirituality, and an ability to elaborate upon it with minimal cant and hypocrisy. I had even, and this is no small achievement, come to terms with a certain sordid obscurity about my family origins, in a place where people celebrate the most tedious details of their personal ancestry. I am the son of a bastard father. My mother was a foreigner, felled long before her time by disappointment and tuberculosis. I was, in the most literal sense, a child of war. I've calculated that my conception occurred just days before my father's unit embarked from England for the hostile shores of Italy on October 23, 1943. There is among his papers a cryptic reference to a summary trial and fine, 5 days' pay, for being AWOL on the night of October 17th. I was born in London, England, July 15th, 1944. Isolation? I had, though perhaps imperfectly, mastered celibacy, the institutional denial of the most human of transactions. I was, and am, to a degree, excluded from my peer group, my brothers in the priesthood, for complex reasons that will soon become apparent. But at the time, I thought that I discovered an important universal truth, that isolation, willingly embraced, becomes the gift of solitude, that discipline ennobles flesh. In that evanescent moment of tranquility, I was feeling okay. I see it as another life. The man I was, a stranger now. I'd spent the weekend in Cape Breton, in the parish of Port Hood, filling in for Mullins, who had gone away with his charismatics or for golf. Escape of some kind. Mullins likes to pace himself. I'd planned to extend my visit by a day, to spend that Monday reading, meditating. The village of Port Hood is a pretty place and restful. I grew up in the area, but my personal connections there were limited. I could pretend to be a stranger, a pose I find congenial. Mullins and the good sisters up the road had given the glebe a comfortable tidiness. Anyone could feel at home there, as in a well-maintained motel. It has a remarkable view of the Gulf and a small fishing harbor just along the coast called Murphy's Pond. It was a pleasant change from the incessant noise and movement at the university an hour or so away, where, normally, my job was dean of students. In truth, it was, as my late father used to say in a rare ironic moment, not so much a job as a position. Others did most of the real work. I was, in fact, in a kind of pastoral limbo, recovering ostensibly from several years of hard, unsavory employment. The phone aroused me on that Monday morning in Port Hood and launched the narrative that I must now, with some reluctance, share. "The bishop needs to see you." "What does he want now?" I asked. "He didn't say. He said to come this evening, to the palace." I know now that I was stalling when I drove to Little Harbor, which is another, smaller fishing port just off a secondary road on the southern edge of the parish. The harbor seemed to be deserted. Among the vivid particulars of that October morning in 1993, I remember a blue heron, knee-deep, transfixed by something in the quiet, oil-still water. Then I heard a throbbing diesel engine, and at that moment observed a tall radio antenna mounted upon what might have been a crucifix. It was moving slowly above the crest of a low ridge in the near distance. The transient cross and the gentle rumble seemed unrelated, until a boat suddenly appeared around the jagged end of a breakwater. It was a fishing vessel, about 40 feet long, bristling with aerials and with a broad workspace behind the cab. The name, the Lady Hawthorne, might have been an omen, or maybe I just think that now, in the clarity of hindsight. The boy standing on the bow was about 18 years old. A rope dangled casually from a large left hand. He wore the uniform of the shore, jeans, a discolored sweater unraveled at the elbows, knee-high rubber boots. He had a thick mop of unfashionably long hair obscuring his brow and neck. His face was tanned. He stared straight ahead, but then turned and nodded, a moment of distracted curiosity as the boat slipped down the long throat of the harbor, stem turning a clean, whispering furrow. It was about 8 o'clock. The blood-red sun hovering behind me lifted a flimsy mist and held it just above the surface of the water. I felt the first stirring of a breeze. Something about the boat, perhaps its name, and the posture of that boy caused me to defer my anxieties for the moment. It was so rare to see someone that age stationary, somber. I was more accustomed to a rowdy, adolescent enthusiasm. This young man, I realized, was exceptional only because of time and place. Maybe any one of them in those circumstances would have been the same, quiet. But he caught my attention nevertheless and linked the moment to tender places in the memory. Doomed boys and men. In retrospect, they all have that stillness. The man at the controls was probably my age, tall and heavy-set. They were, to my mind, almost reckless then, rushing through the narrow passage, past a nestling line of sister boats. But just before the wharf there was a roar of reverse acceleration, and the Lady Hawthorne seemed to pivot in a tight circle, then drift gently into a space between two others, bow pointing seaward. The boy stepped casually ashore with the rope. The older man was already at the stern, gathering another line into a coil, which he tossed up onto the land. The two fishermen were winching some large plastic boxes onto the dock as I was walking back to my car. Father and son, I assumed. They didn't seem to notice me. I was almost at the car when the older man spoke. "Wicked morning, eh, Father?" I turned. "I never forget a face," he said. "Father McCaskill, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. He walked toward me then, holding out a large hand. He seemed a bit unsteady. The boy was back on board the boat and out of sight. "Dan McKay," he said. "I think I heard you're from up around the strait." "Yes. And you?" "I'm a Shore Road McKay." His hair, the color of sand, was streaked with wisps of gray. A name stirred in the memory. "Danny Ban," I said. "They used to call you Danny Ban, I think." He blushed. "Years ago. I'd hate to think what you heard. Danny Bad was more like it, probably." I laughed. "But I don't live here now. I'm up in Hawthorne. Been there for years. Built my own place after the young fella came along." "Hawthorne," I said. "I noticed the name on your boat. You know the place?" "I've heard of it, but I've never been there." "You should drop in sometime. Visit the house." "Maybe I will." The boy was walking toward their truck, ignoring us.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?